All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, whether it's in the evening, in the morning, in the afternoon. We are so glad you're here. We're glad you're here again. Thanks for sticking by and staying with us. I've got a couple of updates that I'm going to kind of share before we kick things off with Steve. So, first of all, we're so glad you're here, and I hope that many of you have questions along the way during this webinar. I've just opened up the live event Q&A. Feel free and add your questions in there as we go ahead and go through the slides. We've got an awesome demo plan for you as well. So as you guys are thinking of questions, feel free to put them in there. I will either respond to them privately or publish them. And then at the end of our session, we will also kick off a few questions to Steve as well. Then I know many of you have asked, is this going to be recorded? This isn't convenient for my time zone, or can I send this to someone else? Absolutely, yes, this will be recorded. As many of you found this initially on our blog post, we're going to update that same blog post with the link for the recording, so you'll have that all in one place. And then additionally, we are going to take the questions from today's conversation, from today's webinar, and we're going to actually make like a simple Q&A right, or like an FAQ right within that blog post. So that's kind of where to keep your eye out. Keep your eye out on the Yammer blog regardless. We've got lots of things coming. So without further ado, let's kick this off. All right, I am so excited to introduce Steve Wynn from the Yammer product team. Steve, take it away.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And by the way, that was Allison Michaels, in case you couldn't tell. I don't know that she got a chance to introduce herself, but thank you, Allison, for kicking us off. We're really excited to have you, and thank you again for hanging with us. We apologize for the reschedule, but glad you were able to make it for this time. And for those listening on the recording, thanks also for sticking with us. I'm Steve Wynn. I'm a principal program manager and product evangelist with the Yammer product and engineering team. And I'm happy to share with you some of the progress that we've been making and share with you kind of where we're headed with Yammer. And like Allison said, please feel free to ask questions throughout. We'll try to get as many of your questions answered throughout the course of this webinar. So to kick things off, I'd like to just share with you, first of all, a little bit about how we think about Yammer here at Microsoft and what we've learned from many of you, our customers, as we've been on this journey with Yammer for many years now. Over time, I think the landscape of communications has changed. There's lots of different ways for people within your organizations to communicate with one another, to collaborate and share information with one another. And of course, Yammer's been around for a long time now, and we think that because there are so many ways for your employees to communicate, we want to focus much more on the value proposition that we think Yammer can provide you and your organizations. So going forward, we really want to focus on Yammer being great at a core set of things. And those are the three things that you see at the top of the slide. We really want Yammer to be great at communities. We want Yammer to be a great place for employees in your organization to come together in a community setting and share their expertise and share their knowledge. When it comes to knowledge, we think Yammer is best at this organization-wide knowledge sharing. There really isn't a place within Office 365 for you to share knowledge at the scale that Yammer provides. And we've seen time and again with many of you that Yammer is a great place for you to build a sense of employee engagement, to build a sense of trust with your employees. I often say that I see with many of our customers and also here at Microsoft that Yammer is this place for people to live the values of their organization. And there's a deep sense of employee engagement behind that. So we really want Yammer to help you be a platform for those things. And those circles that you see underneath that, those are some of the scenarios that we oftentimes see our customers getting value out of Yammer. First is around leadership engagement. I talk to many customers, and I think there's a big push from many corporate comms folks, this desire to have a better connection with leaders and for leaders to better understand what's going on across the organization. Yammer is a great place for that. As corporate communicators, many of you you need and want a place for you to be able to share information at a broad company-wide scale. But corporate communications is no longer just about pushing information at your employees, but it's really about having this multi-directional dialogue with your employees, and Yammer is great at that. And I talked about knowledge sharing, and when it comes to knowledge sharing, you just don't know where in your organization that next great idea is going to come from, or you don't know who is going to have that answer to the question that you might have on your mind. And again, this is where we want to really invest in making Yammer this great place for knowledge sharing as well. And then when it comes to employee experience, we want to make sure that Yammer is modern, it feels up to date, that it is familiar to many of the consumer applications that you and your employees use on a day-to-day basis. And all of this is founded on sort of a common superpower that we think Yammer is great at, which is really around open, inclusive, discoverable conversations. This is the part that Yammer really sets itself apart. With the activity feed within Yammer, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. That's really the place within Yammer for you to be able to see conversations from across your network. There's sort of this notion of open by default. You don't have to do anything extra for these conversations to be open and discoverable to others within your organization. And of course, we are proudly part of the Microsoft 365 suite. And in the past, Yammer has been a destination, a place for people to go to, and we're going to continue to invest in that destination, and we'll show you that in just a little bit. So we still want the Yammer destination to be a bright, vibrant, engaging place for people to come to. But we also want to make sure to bring the value of Yammer to other parts of the suite as well. And you'll see how we're doing that with Teams, how we've done that with Teams, and how we're going to continue to invest in making Teams a great place for people to consume Yammer. We want people to be able to access Yammer from within SharePoint and from within Outlook as well. So we're very bullish on making sure that you can experience the goodness and the value of open, inclusive, discoverable conversations from wherever you might be within the suite. And from a privacy standpoint, I'm sure many of you invest in Microsoft because of our stance on security, our stance on privacy. I'll talk a little bit about some of the improvements that we've made also from a compliance standpoint as well. But of course, just know that we take very seriously your data, and we'll continue to take that stance going forward as well. So now I'd like to transition and share my screen, and we will go into the demo. And I'm going to switch over to Yammer, and I trust that you'll be able to see my screen at this point. But now what you'll see here is we are in the brand new Yammer experience. I'd like to take some time to walk you through some of the components of the new experience. Some of you may have heard of Microsoft's new Fluent design system, not to be confused with the Fluid, but the Fluent design system. And really what we want to do is make Yammer feel like an integrated part of the Office 365 suite. We don't want Yammer to stick out like a sore thumb. We want it to feel like an integrated part of the Office 365 or Microsoft 365 experience that you know and love. And we're proud to say that Yammer is actually the first fully Fluent native application within the Office 365 suite. And so we've done things like, for those of you that are familiar with Yammer, you know that there used to be a search bar over here on the left-hand side. Well, now we've moved the search bar up to the top. So now you can access the search in the same place that you access search from across SharePoint or Teams or Outlook, up here in the suite header. We've also moved the notifications into the suite header as well. So now you can access your Yammer notifications in the same place that you access your notifications from Outlook and SharePoint and other places from across the suite. So we hope that this starts to bring a much more consistent feel to the way that you use Yammer and the way that you use other Office 365 applications. Now, I talked a little bit about our emphasis on employee engagement. We think, of course, a big part of employee engagement is your ability to connect your employees to your company brand. And so going forward on the Yammer homepage, you'll be able to put your company logo here up in the top right. So this, now you can have your company logo nice and front and on the right rail, so that people can have that nice visual connection to your company and to your brand. We think this is also important because we want people to land on the Yammer homepage and have that immediate sense of connection to your company, so that there's a sense of, again, trust and safety, that they're sharing knowledge and insight into a company approved place or a company approved property. Another big change that we're making is, if I draw your attention over here to the left-hand side, you'll see that we are making a change to rename Yammer groups to instead be called Yammer communities. And I'm sure many of you face this question of, when do I use Yammer and when do I use Teams? And we want to help you in those discussions and help creating much more clarity for what to use Yammer for. So we really feel like changing the name from Yammer groups to instead be called Yammer communities helps to create some of that clarity, so that when your employees come to Yammer, it's there's some clear distinction on what to use Yammer for. You'll also notice on the left-hand side, there's some new icons here that are focused on these communities. You see hearts here. So now you can actually favorite your community. So if there's a certain community that you want to have quick access to on the left rail, now you can click on the heart and it'll automatically get pinned to the left rail, so you can have quick access to those communities. This is one of the top features that we heard from many of you from user voice. You didn't want to have to sift through, or it wasn't always easy to find those communities on your community list on the left rail. So we wanted to make sure that you now have quick access through favoriting those communities. We also did a lot of work. Hopefully you see on the left and the right rail here, we did a lot of work to really clean up some of the activity that was happening over on the left and the right rails. We really wanted to focus your attention on the feed experience itself. You might also notice, for those that have been around Yammer for a while, we have now consolidated down into one feed. So instead of having 3 different feeds, discovery, all, and following, well, now we've consolidated that down into one feed that's focused on both discovery and following. And what we've done is we've actually improved the machine learning that goes into this algorithm. So over time, it'll continue to improve. It'll take signals from across conversations that you're participating in, conversations that you're liking, and continue to improve the discovery element of the algorithm. But like I said, we also include following as well. So any people that you follow or communities that you follow will also be included in your feed. You also notice in the some improvements that we made to the feed with regards to the conversation card. So we've taken this kind of card view to threads and discussions, and we think that this provides a much nicer and cleaner visual separation between threads and conversations. So now you can more clearly see where threads start and where threads end. We think that creates much more just much more clarity within the feed, so you can parse through content, parse through information more easily. You also see this one here is a question here. We've had question and answer in Yammer for some time now, but we also wanted to make our unique post types like questions and answers stand out a bit more. So here you see a question in the feed. This is a call for help from one of your colleagues. So we want to make sure that that is bright and that stands out. So here you see question, you see the best answer. Of course, when a best answer is marked, it gets pinned to the top of the replies. So you don't have to sift through all those replies to find them. That best answer is right there at the top of the thread. We always want to make sure that when folks are uploading images and videos, that those are bright and engaging in the feed, that they draw people into the conversations. If there's a video in line, we want to, of course, make that available to you as well. We also did some work within the card itself to improve the space for which you consume information. Here you see an @mention where there's 11 people that were @mentioned. In the past, when you saw those @mentions, if there were a bunch of them, then it took up a bunch of space in the thread itself. Well, now it's rolled up. You can hover over it and see who has been @mentioned in the thread. If I click on it, I actually see the full list. We have this panel that slides out, and you can see the people that have been @mentioned. questions. Similar, we have a similar experience for likes as well. So if you click on the likes, you can you can see in the likes panel everyone that has liked this particular message. So we've done some work to just take advantage of the space within the thread itself. You see these sort of bubble replies. This is sort of a common design pattern that you see in a lot of social applications. We think that's a familiar pattern as well. You also see, in this case, Adele has been @mentioned in this particular reply. And there's a little @mention indicator on that reply so that I can visually see that I've been @mentioned as I'm going through the feed. I talked about the Fluent design system earlier, and this @mention icon is actually the same icon that you see in Teams as well when you've been @mentioned. So we brought some of those similar design patterns through to Yammer and sharing them with Teams as well. As I scroll down a little bit further here, you see a new treatment for praise. Praise is a great way for a lot of our customers to recognize employees. It's a great way for you to share in the success and share and sort of celebrate the good work of your colleagues. And so again, we want these unique post types like praise to stand out. So we have a new treatment for things like praise and also things like polls. Polls, we also wanted to make sure that those stood out a bit more than they have in the past. So praise, polls, questions, you'll see some new treatments to those. And of course, like I said, images and videos, those will always continue to be engaging pieces of the feed experience itself. Another piece of feedback that we got from many of you is having multiple profiles to manage. You may have seen, or you may know that within Yammer, there's a place for you to manage your profile and have a description and so forth. Well, going forward, we want to have provide you with one central place for you to manage that profile. So going forward, Yammer will take advantage of the Office 365 people card. So here you see when I hover over Johanna's name, I see her Office 365 people card. I can see her org information. This is all the same information that's coming in from Azure Active Directory and through to the Office 365 profile. So going forward, we want to make sure that there's one central place for your employees to have to manage their profile. So we're excited to announce that going forward, you'll have that Yammer will take advantage of the Office 365 people card. Okay, let's move over and talk about some of the improvements that we've made within the community section of Yammer. So this was previously known as Yammer groups. So when I come into this leadership connection community, this happens to be a community, as we talked about earlier, a big emphasis of ours is really around leadership connection. So this is a leadership connection community. Perhaps you have one in your organization, or perhaps you've been thinking about something similar. But this is a great place for your leaders to be able to engage with your employees and be able to listen to their questions and invite their questions, share what they might be doing for the next week. Who are they meeting with? What are some of their top priorities? And getting reaction and getting starting a dialogue with employees about those topics. So that's what this particular leadership connection community, that's the purpose that this one serves. But one of the things that you'll notice at the top here is that we're introducing an ability to have a cover photo. So administrators of this community will be able to update this community. In this case, you see this has a nice visual, a nice graphic, but of course I can update it and use it for any number of purposes. Maybe there's a town hall event that's coming up and I want to be able to upload that and share some information about the upcoming event, and I'll maybe try that again later when I'm able to. But we imagine our community owners will use this as an opportunity to convey information about a campaign, or like I said, maybe there's an event coming up. Lots of different ways for people to be able to use the cover photo. Here you also see an ability to favorite your communities here as well. So this is the same place that you can favorite a community, or over here on the left arrow, you can do the same as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the publisher. So this place here where you can post messages. So here you can be one click into creating a poll. You can praise somebody, or you can ask a question. I could just do a regular update as well. And some improvements that we've made to the publisher experience. Number one is we've done a lot of work to really clean up the experience, and there's used to be a lot of different icons over here, and it's perhaps a little bit confusing on what to do with all those icons. So we really wanted to clean it up and just make the overall publisher experience much more clean for folks. Of course, you always have the ability to do rich text, so bold, italics, underline, bulleted lists. So if you need to make your post stand out, of course, you can do those things. And like I mentioned, you can do a praise, a poll, and a question. But also for administrators, one thing that you'll be able to do is make an announcement out of any post. So previously, where you could make an announcement out of a regular text-based post, going forward, you'll also be able to make an announcement out of a question or a praise or a poll. So that way, if you want to make sure that everybody within the community sees a poll and gets a push notification, gets an email notification about those posts, you can make an announcement out of that. So in this case, I'm just going to make an announcement about join the upcoming town hall. I can also upload upload files. We have brought through the most recently used list, so any recent files that you've been using will also be in the file picker here. The GIF selector, as many of you love a well-placed GIF. You can also hover over them, and we now enlarge them so you have a little bit better preview of that particular GIF as well. So of course, great ways to make your posts a bit more engaging. But in this case, I'm just going to make a regular post. I'm going to make it an announcement, and I'm not able to post it. Let's see. Pardon the technical difficulty here. Let me reload. Appreciate your patience. Any questions so far, Allison?
Oh yes, they're coming in hot. Oh, I hear a little bit of an echo on myself.
Okay. All right, we're back. So let's see. Let's try this again. I'm logged in as a new profile here. So I'll say join the upcoming town hall, and we'll make that an announcement, and we'll post it. All right, so there's our announcement. We've made our announcement. A couple of other things that we've done in the feed as well, in this community feed. You have the ability on the left-hand side to filter. So if I just want to see, for example, the new conversations, or I just want to see the questions within the feed, I can filter the feed to see just the questions. Or maybe I'm a community owner and I want to make sure I answer all the questions, or that all the questions have a best answer mark. In this case, I can filter to see just the unanswered questions, and I get anything that does not have a best answer mark. So we think these are some nice community owner capabilities that allow you to sort of hone in on what's happening within your community. So I made this announcement, and now perhaps I want to pin it. So I want to make sure that everybody that comes to this community has visibility to it, is able to see this when they first come to this community. Well, now I can pin this conversation, and when I do so, you'll see that it gets pinned to the top of the feed. Now we have a live event here. I'll come back to that in just a second. So that is actually taking precedent. But anytime somebody comes to this feed, they'll have this pinned conversation at the top of the feed. I also have the ability as the community owner to close the conversation. So let's say this was an announcement that I didn't want people to respond to for whatever reason, or maybe the thread has run its course. Maybe it was a question and answer and the questions have been answered, and I don't need any more responses to it. So I can close the conversation, and you'll see that removes the reply bar, and so no one can reply to the question or reply to the thread any longer. This is a good transition, Allison. I'm going to move over to mobile. Maybe I can take a question before we move to that.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions in regards to the feed.
Yeah.
So would you talk a little bit about the algorithm of the new consolidated one feed? Is it only the communities that you're a part of? How do things kind of appear? And then if your community maybe isn't very popular, what are some ways that, some people can get the word out about their community to kind of show it in their colleagues' feeds? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. So the feed itself is going to take signals from how much people are interacting with certain threads and certain conversations. So if there's lots of likes or lots of replies, you will optimize for those conversations in the feed. We are working. We'll continue to improve the algorithm to take signals from across Office 365, so that we continue to improve and make it as relevant a feed as possible for users. Hopefully
okay, and I've got, yep, that is a good one. I have one more question, kind of related. Somebody asked, how can I post on behalf of someone? I know you and I have recently had this conversation, so I said I would ask. We do have a couple of workarounds, so yeah, if you want to kind of tackle that real quick and then keep going.
Post, if we get a chance and can link to the blog post that talks about scheduling a post in Yammer. Through that post, you'll actually be able to schedule and delegate as well. So we can share that post, that blog post in the chat if we get a chance. But through that post, it uses a combination of what's now called as Power Automate. So you can create a flow in Power Automate to be able to schedule a Yammer post, and then there's taking those similar steps, you can actually delegate the post as well.
Great, thank you. I have a couple more for you, but I'll wait. All right, okay. Thanks.
So here's the newly updated Yammer mobile app, and you see that we take some of the same concepts that you saw on the web. You see the nice cover photo at the top. You see the live event that's there. You see a pinned. This actually isn't refreshed here, but you see a pinned thread here. So you see a lot of the very similar treatments that you saw on the web, and we really want to make sure that the experience is consistent between web and mobile, so that as you're transitioning between web and mobile, that the experience is seamless between the two. I'm going to click in the top right and click on the pencil icon, and this will take me into the mobile view of the publisher. So I walked through the publisher on the web, but I just want to show you the updated publisher on the mobile app. You see I'm right into being able to create an announcement, being able to create a poll or a praise or a question from mobile as well. But I also have this one-touch ability now to record a video. So I'm going to record a video here. And I'm going to show you a new camera capability that we have where we can actually do some new annotations. So here you see I'm in the camera. I can actually annotate here. I can maybe circle my jacket in the background. I can add photo stickers to it here. So if I want to add a Yammer logo, I can do that here. Let's add the Year of Yammer sticker also. Here's Year of Yammer. So if I want to add some stickers to this, I could also add some emojis to make it a little bit more fun as well. So let's record a couple seconds of video here. So I hit the record button, so now I'm recording some video. Maybe I want to pause it. Maybe I want to change my angle, and I want to maybe record from this angle instead. So now I can add on, and I can add another clip to this video. I'll pause it here. Let's say I'm happy with it. Right now, the ability to do some light editing. Do some lightweight editing here. And when I'm ready to upload it, I can share it here, and I can say, here's my video update. And even before I was done typing the message, you can see that the video has already uploaded. So we've done a lot of work to really optimize the uploading experience. So whether it's a picture or a video, we want to make sure that that is quick and seamless for folks. So hopefully you'll appreciate the performance improvements that we've made to this experience as well. So I'm going to upload this video. And this video will be available for folks to consume within the feed as well. So this is a new capability that will be available in the next quarter or so. I I seem to be having some trouble with Adele's account right now. Try one more time here. But this is a new capability that we think will help with, we've heard some scenarios from folks where leaders might be coming out of an event and they want to be able to do a quick update or just share some top of mind thoughts from that event. So we think that this video capture capability will help with that. Maybe you have folks that are in a facility or in a first line scenario. I'm going to cancel this for now. We think this is also a great opportunity for them to share some of those video updates from the field as well. And of course, we also have the live event capability. So you have hopefully you've had an opportunity to run a live event within your organization. So I'm just going to run this live event here from my mobile phone. But you'll see here we have this live event running. In this case, we've brought in there's a studio crew that's been brought in, and we're able to broadcast that live event directly to Yammer. And of course, I have all the ability to ask questions here. So I can say, when is the new product launching? And of course, the video floats with me. So I have that video with me when I'm posting a message, so I don't lose the context of the audio and the video. So it stays with me, so I don't lose the context of what's happening in the live event itself. So those are some of the video capabilities. Our new ability to capture sort of short form video within Yammer, and of course the ability to consume live events that you might be broadcasting across your organization as well. So I'm going to switch back over to the browser. And let's talk a little bit about some of the improvements that we're making to bring Yammer to other parts of the suite. I talked a little bit about how we, of course, hopefully you saw here the investments that we're making in the destination of Yammer, but we also want to bring Yammer to other parts of the suite as well. So I'm going to switch over to SharePoint, and here you'll see within SharePoint, we have our Yammer web part. So now you'll be able to bring Yammer conversations from, in this case, from the sales best practice community to this sales best practice communication site. We want to make sure that people are able to actively participate in these conversations. So I can actually reply to these conversations. You'll see that we're bringing the same, we'll be bringing the same updated design of Yammer to this SharePoint page as well. So people will be able to actually participate in the conversations in this particular sales best practice community without having to leave the page itself. And we're marrying sort of the goodness of the rich content that you can create within SharePoint with the conversational element that we know that Yammer is great at. So look forward to the updated SharePoint web part as well. When I move over to Teams, within Teams, we've always had the ability, or we've had the ability for a while, to have a Yammer tab within Teams. So here we have that leadership connection community, and I can have this a view into this leadership connection community without having to leave the context of a Teams channel if I didn't want to. So if I'm in the corporate communications team, I'm able to see the conversations that are happening in the leadership connection community in the context of the channel. But many of you told us that you wanted to see more of what was happening across Yammer. So what we've done is we're introducing a Yammer personal app for Teams, which will allow you to pin Yammer on the left rail. And so when I click on Yammer over here, you'll see now that it brings me to my full Yammer experience. It's going to bring me to, I'm going to see my feed, I'm going to see my communities. So I'm able to access Yammer in much the same way that I'm able to see Yammer if I were to go to Yammer directly. So here you see that leadership connection community, you see that pinned post there. I can actually click into the live event and participate in the live event directly here from within Teams. So we're excited about this new capability. And for those of you that are using Teams more and more and rolling out Teams within your organizations, we think this is a great way for you to experience the goodness of Teams as the hub for your day-to-day work, the hub for the place that you do meetings, but also be able to access the goodness of Yammer and communities from Teams as well.
Hey, Steve, before you go out of Teams, will you just talk a little bit about just maybe the way that you personally use Teams and Yammer together? Give a couple of examples. We've had a couple of questions kind of come in as saying, yeah, what is the difference? I really like the name change to communities. That's starting to make it a little bit more clear, but maybe just talk a little bit about kind of maybe some use cases that you see.
Yeah, just very simply, I often describe Teams as a place for teams for people you know, and Yammer for people that you don't know. If I describe the way that I use Teams on a day-to-day basis, it's for having conversations with folks like Allison, who's on my team, people that I work with a lot, either through chat or through some Teams channels. Those are some of the places I use Teams for sort of day-to-day operational type work. But then there's the times where I need to break out of that, and I need sort of diversity of thoughts. I need to get a question answered that people in my team they don't know, right? It's limiting in scope. But I can go to a Yammer community and be able to ask that question of thousands, if not in our case at Microsoft, hundreds of thousands of people. In fact, one of our most vibrant communities within Microsoft is the Microsoft Teams community. It's the place within our Yammer network for Microsoft employees to provide feedback about Teams. It's the place we get announcements about new features and new capabilities from Teams, new program offerings for our customers. And it's a really hard thing to do, that sort of communication at scale from within Teams, but Yammer allows for a great mechanism for people to have these long form conversations about various community topics, in this example around Teams. It allows for you to discover other experts and other new people that know about Teams or whatever the community might be about. So hopefully that's helpful. So Teams is for people that you know. Yammer is for people that you don't know. I also have some colleagues that say that Teams is great for cohesion, right? Again, it's for the people that you know. It's going to be great for those teams that work closely with one another on a day-to-day basis. But Yammer is great for diversity. You don't know where those next great ideas are going to come from. You don't know who's going to have the answer to your question. So Teams for cohesion, Yammer for diversity as well. Hopefully that helps.
Great, thank you. Yep. I think so, hopefully.
So let's switch now to the last part of our integration story, which is around Outlook. We also want to be able to bring the goodness of Yammer conversations into Outlook in a much more meaningful way than we are doing today. Here you see an example of a Yammer notification. Earlier I talked about doing an announcement within a community and how that creates assured delivery of messages. So this is an example of that. So this was an announcement that was made in the Leadership Connection community. And you see here the thread, we've actually brought the whole thread to life. So hopefully you saw this thread earlier in the demo, but you see these images are rendered right in line here. I can like messages here. I can reply right from here. Here's the YouTube video that was embedded here, so I can actually play that YouTube video. But if I respond here, this actually responds to the Yammer message. So I'm responding and it'll actually post it back to Yammer. So I have all the same capabilities that I had previously, where I can have rich text and I can attach images here if I need to. Here's another example of a message that we've rendered here in Outlook, in the body of Outlook here. Here is a stream video. So if you're using Stream and you're making posts in Yammer and you're linking to those stream videos, well, now I can consume this thread and I can play the stream video right here from within Outlook as well. We brought things like question and answer into the Outlook pane as well. So if I'm an owner of this thread or owner of this community, I can mark or unmark the best answer directly from here. But we've also brought polls to life as well. So now you can send that poll out and have confidence that people can interact with that poll directly here from within Outlook. So this, we think, is going to really help with a number of scenarios. Number one, there's maybe those opportunities where you're sending email distributions or email memos to people, and it's not really the norm to reply all to those emails, but instead maybe send those as announcements in Yammer, and then they come through as announcements, as you saw here, and you can respond in a much more accepted kind of back and forth conversational style technique, and using Yammer as the way to have the conversation versus having a conversation in email. We also think, when we look across most of our successful Yammer networks, there are those networks that leaders are very deeply engaged and very active in participating in those messages in their Yammer network. And we think that if we can bring these Yammer conversations to your leaders, we think many of your executives, many of your leaders still spend a ton of their time in Outlook. And if we can bring messages to them in this way and allow for them to be able to participate in these lightweight ways, give a quick like to a message, give a quick response right here from within email, we can really help to boost the adoption of Yammer amongst your leaders and your executives within your organization. So those are the big things that we're working on. I walked through, if we could maybe switch back to the slides, Dylan. We talked through a number of capabilities that we are excited to be bringing to you. First we talked about the redesign and really refreshing and bringing you a new, modern, clean, simple experience to Yammer. We talked about being able to pin a post, being able to close conversations, so some new admin capabilities. If we go to the next slide, Dylan. So we brought a number of new admin capabilities to you, the ability to have a nice cover photos to give you a much deeper sense of visual connection within a community. I didn't demo it, but I should have mentioned that we're also bringing the capabilities around some of those configuration or community configurations, having a cover photo and being able to change the group photo for all company as well. You'll also soon be able to rename all company. So we've gotten a lot of feedback from many of you on needing to be able to customize all company to fit your organization better. So we're working on some of those visual updates as well. You'll also have the ability to pin and close conversations within all company. So you'll be able to do those things within all company. We talked about some scenarios for leadership engagement. We talked about the new video capture, the short videos, how to do live events as well, question and answer, filters to be able to see filters on questions. And we've also, like I said, done a lot of work to really update the way that you post messages, making it cleaner, being able to have quick access to your Office files through through your most recently used list, and of course, just updates that we've made to the feed to make the feed experience just more visually and more vibrant and engaging as well. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline and when you can expect some of these updates. First of all, I should talk about security and compliance as well, another very important topic for many of you. We are now able to support e-discovery for your Yammer networks. Any of you that have just created a brand new network or are going to be creating a new Yammer network, those will come with e-discovery out of the box. There's also a capability called native mode that will ensure that your Yammer communities are Office 365 connected out of the box, so that you have a SharePoint document library behind it, so that you get SharePoint sites supporting it. You get Azure Active Directory membership supported by those groups and communities as well. So brand new communities will get native mode and will get e-discovery out of the box. We're currently rolling out e-discovery and a native mode tool for you to make sure that your networks are in compliance, and so that you can apply e-discovery. We're in the process of rolling that out to existing networks. So with e-discovery, you'll have the ability to discover Yammer content in the same place that you discover content today in the Security and Compliance Center. So right alongside Exchange and SharePoint and Teams, you'll just have an option there to include Yammer if you'd like. For those of you with E5 or advanced e-discovery, you'll have the ability to reconstruct the full conversation, so you see the full context of the Yammer conversation. So those capabilities are currently available to brand new networks, and like I said, we're making them available very soon to existing networks. And as far as the timeline for the rest of the capabilities that I talked about, we're in the process of rolling out the brand new Yammer experience. We're in preview currently. We plan on going GA with the new Yammer experience sometime in the first half of 2020. I'd probably guess that more towards the end of the first half of 2020 is when we plan on going GA with the new Yammer experience. Like I mentioned, we're in preview, and I'll give a quick update on the preview in just one second. All of the integrations that I talked through with regards to live events, I also should mention that a new capability that we'll have is the ability to broadcast a Teams live event through to Yammer. That'll be available by the end of this quarter. So that'll be a new update that we'll have available in the live event space as well. And then the video capture capability that I mentioned, that'll be available by the end of this first quarter as well. So the updated SharePoint web part that'll have the new design and the Yammer app in Teams, you can expect those by the end of this quarter, first part of Q2. And as well as Outlook also. I'm guessing there's probably a question in the chat somewhere, Allison, about Yammer and Outlook. Is it what I showed you was Yammer in Outlook? So that is actually starting to roll out now. We have a handful of customers that we've already rolled out the Yammer integration to for OA, and we'll continue to roll out the integration starting with Outlook on the web, and then we do have plans to bring the integration to the desktop and the mobile apps later on this year as well. So let's talk a little bit about the preview. And so we announced at Microsoft Ignite the opportunity to participate in the preview of the new Yammer experience. And I have to say, first of all, thank you to everybody that signed up. We were overwhelmed with requests to participate in the preview. So thank you to everybody that was able to sign up. We have since closed the preview from further signups. Like I said, just because we've been overwhelmed by the response, we had to kind of close the floodgates. So thank you, first of all, for expressing your interest. We have started the preview with a select number of customers, a small number of customers so far. If you are part of that select group of customers, you have already been contacted. So just know that the preview has started, and we have contacted a handful of customers to participate in the initial phases of our preview. If you have not been contacted on the steps to take to enable your network for the preview, please be patient with us. We want to get it to you. We want to be mindful of performance. We want the preview to be a good experience for you. There are a set of limitations currently in the preview where we don't have all the features built just yet. As you saw in the demo, there are certain things missing, like the polls and the praise and things like that. We're in the process of building those things, but we will be expanding the preview. So if you have not been contacted yet, please be patient with us, and we will let you know when we're ready to enable your network for the preview. But again, thank you all for your interest in the preview.
I think that might have answered at least 80 of the questions that were asked, was when are we going to get this and can we get into the preview? So thank you for addressing that.
Well, and I will also mention that we will continue to update the mobile application on its regular cadence. So if you're using Yammer on mobile, you'll likely see already some of the design changes that I shared with you today have already hit the mobile app, both Android and iOS, and will continue to be updated as well, independent of the preview. So even if you're not in the preview, you'll continue to get updates on the mobile, on the iOS and Android mobile apps. In fact, some of the updates will come faster on mobile than they will on the web anyway. So continue to use our mobile, if not more, and continue to give us feedback there as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our roadmap going forward. So we talked about some of the things that some of the areas that we're invested in today. We're also, from a compliance standpoint, we're going to be working on data retention. So we want to make sure that you have a built-in capability to do data retention, just like you do with e-discovery. And going forward, we also want to focus on more of the external scenarios. So today within Yammer, we want to make sure that your external groups are supported across geos, across various network tenancies. We want to make sure that the external group scenario is an Office 365 group connected scenario, so we'll be continuing to work on that. We're heavily invested in improving our search, making sure that, as I talked about earlier, we want Yammer to be a great place for deep knowledge sharing and knowledge retention. You may have also heard about Project Cortex at Ignite. We're deeply involved with Project Cortex, and we see great opportunity for Yammer to also be part of Project Cortex as well. So you'll see stuff coming from us from there as well. We want to continue to invest in ways to make Yammer better across Office 365. So there's improvements that we want to make within SharePoint with regards to sharing, the way that you share news and information into Yammer, and making that much more of a first-class experience. We continue to have very rich discussions with teams on furthering the integrations that you see. So bringing things like the notifications into that team's personal app, working on things like search so that you can have a good search experience within the Yammer personal app in Teams as well. And we continue to want to make sure that Yammer is the place within your organization to do communities at scale. So again, I think through some of the work that we'll be doing doing with Project Cortex, I think you'll see some improvements in the area of communities and knowledge and sharing knowledge at scale. So if you weren't able to join us at Ignite, the great news is that all of our sessions from Ignite were recorded. So you'll have access to this deck afterwards, and you can reference them. Please take a look at some of the sessions that we did at Ignite. We took deeper dives into certain areas around, for example, using video within Yammer. I did that with a colleague of mine, Kasha. Better ways to use Yammer to support communities and to do knowledge sharing. Chris Bortlick, one of our MTC architects, he did a great session on sentiment analysis and how to apply sentiment analysis to your Yammer network. So highly encourage you to check out some of those sessions from Ignite. And of course, we have a number of great adoption resources for you as well. So if you're just starting Yammer, or maybe you're relaunching Yammer, please go to our Yammer adoption resources page. We have a number of great resources there for you already. And Allison, I know you and your team are heavily working on improvements to those. I shared a bunch of the updates that we're making to the UI, and I know your team is working on a lot of the assets to help our customers through that change as well.
Yes, and actually during the webinar, we had an MVP blog post go live about 6 ways that you guys can start to get ready for the new Yammer now. And we have an FAQ in there that you can start to share with your colleagues. It's broken out by role. You're also going to be able to kind of test out some of the cover photos and kind of get some of those things ready to go. And as these things continue to roll out, and as we kind of finish some of the documentation, keep your eyes on the blogs. That is where we are going to continue to post additional documentation and the adoption resources for you guys as the change happens. I do have a couple of questions left, Steve. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left that I do want to kick over to you if that is okay. And sure. I think we should be good. One of the questions that was asked by multiple people, if we go back to like the very beginning of creating a net new community, can you talk a little bit about the O365 group piece of that, as well as do the group resources like the SharePoint site, the document library, what kind of happens with that? We had quite a few questions about that.
Yeah, so the way that works is for those in your organization that have the ability to create Office 365 groups, when they create a Yammer community, it'll automatically get those Office 365 group resources connected to it. So it would automatically get the SharePoint site, it would get the document library, and so forth. So those will all just sort of happen behind the scenes, and then the membership gets managed in AAD and those sorts of things. So that's how that works today. If somebody that in your organization that does not have Office 365 group creation capabilities, if they were to create a Yammer community, it would be essentially what we would call a disconnected Yammer community. It would not have the Office 365 group resources behind it, so it would not have the document library and so forth. It would sort of feel like a standalone community, if it were. We do have on our roadmap, it should be coming out in the next, I think, quarter or so. We will honor the Office 365 group creation rights that you've set up within your organization. So if I'm a person that does not have Office 365 group creation rights and I go into Yammer and I go to create a community, I won't be able to do it. So that's coming.
Okay. And what about kind of like the additional resources? Sorry, did you say that about like once you create, you just said it would be a disconnected community? Like, will it create the SharePoint document library?
No,
the OneNote? No. Okay. All right. Okay. I think when you were demoing it, we couldn't quite see where it was within the community. And from my understanding, it's just moved. And so I'll make sure that we communicate that and make sure that people know it's still there if there are no 365 connected community, but it has moved from where it originally is.
Yeah, and a lot of that we just wanted to, again, clean up the overall navigation and overall, right rail activity that was happening over there. I think for the majority of users, they probably don't know what those things mean. So we opted to move the files. Maybe we saw there's the files in the top navigation. So you'll still be able to access the files there within the community. It'll link you to SharePoint if you need to, but we wanted to try to make it an easier experience to consume those things. And some of the things that happen with Office 365 groups will happen in the back end and aren't so, in a lot of cases, aren't important to most end users, I would say.
Okay, and then I'll just ask the final question about search. We had quite a few questions about kind of what's new with search, what's coming with search. I don't know if you can share a little bit more about when you do search, what are you searching? Are there best practices for that? So a couple questions about search.
Yeah, so in the new experience, when we initially provide the new experience, there won't be a ton of changes to the search experience itself. The search results are sort of priority ranked based off of communities that you are a part of and conversations that you're a part of, people that you're following. So that will continue for the foreseeable future. We are investing. I don't have a ton to share right now on specific details, but I can say that we are working on improving the overall search experience. I know we want to make sure to bring Yammer search results to other parts of the suite and bring other results from across Office 365 into Yammer search. So I can't provide details on exactly when some of those improvements will come, but we definitely want to make sure that we improve the overall search experience. So we are
okay. And last question, this is an easy one. Is there any plans to treat announcements like questions, praise, and polls?
So I think that's one of the things I mentioned, but I may not have actually demoed it. But yes, you will be able to make a question or a poll or a praise into an announcement. And then in that way, then you can get those same notifications and alerts that you get from regular announcements that you get today. So you get a push notification on your phone, you get the email announcement or email notification as well. So yes, that is coming. That will come with the new Yammer experience.
All right, great. Well, we've got lots of questions still. I will continue to kind of take these and build the FAQ to post on the blog, and we will post a recording. Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon, this morning, this day. We're glad you're here.
Thanks, everyone, for your time.